If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you're testing your blood sugar 4 or more times per day, injecting insulin 3 or more times per day, or using an insulin pump, call the Diabetic Health Hotline today.
800-712-8002. That's 800-712-8002. Paid for by U.S. Med.
Hello, I'm Richard Anderson. You are listening to TV Confidential.
There were always situations that were clearly challenging in that David Vincent couldn't make others believe that he had witnessed what he had. But that's a good thing. That's a good challenge for an actor, is to have to convince others that this is happening. It's really happening. And David didn't always know to whom he was speaking. He could have been speaking to someone who was an invader, because they infiltrated law, education, government, science, law enforcement. So it was always a challenge. For an actor, what's better than to portray a living nightmare?
Ed Robertson, welcoming you back to TV Confidential, radio talk show about television that is pleased to welcome Mr. Roy Thinnes, the actor known around the world as David Vincent, the mild-mannered architect who discovers that aliens from another planet are trying to conquer the human race, only to find that no one believes him in the classic Quinn Martin series, The Invaders. Roy Thinnes also played Jeremiah Smith on The X-Files. There is a direct line to The X-Files and The Invaders, which we'll ask Roy about in just a second. Plus, we'll touch on some of his other interests as an actor and an artist. We began our conversation by asking Roy about his long association with producer Quinn Martin. You are unusual in that there were certain actors he liked, and if you got on his radar screen, you got a job in pretty much any show he had in production. But you are unusual because not every actor had a chance to meet with Quinn, and you met with Quinn. This is before The Invaders, right?
Not until The Invaders. I worked for Quinn Martin on The Untouchables, which was one of his masterpieces. Mm-hmm. There were several shows.
Yeah, you did one of the last episodes of The Fugitive, if I remember correctly.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
I did that just before we started talking about The Invaders. Mm-hmm. But there were other shows like, I want to say High and the Mighty. It was a show about the American Air Force in World War II.
12 O'Clock High.
12 O'Clock High. I was on 2 or 3 episodes of that in different characters. And always I had this marvelous experience because I was working with not only the best actors, directors, writers, especially writers. Quinn Martin, I think, always capitalized more than any other general producer because of his success rate. And his success was based on the fact that he shared the profits with writers, directors, producers, always saying, I'm going to expect a lot of you. Mm-hmm. So it may be a challenge to your marriage. There are long hours involved, but that's why I'm paying you over scale. And everybody got it, and everybody admired him for that. And he had the respect of everyone, from the stagehands all the way on up to the stars, to the producers. But most important, he always hired the very best writers. Mm-hmm. And you cannot have a successful film without a great script. There's just no way around it. You may be speaking nonsense if it's written by an amateur, but he's solicited the very best writers and even made them producers of these shows.
Absolutely. George Eckstein was one of them. I know that. I mean, George started as a writer, on a number of Quinn shows, and then eventually he produced a number of shows for Quinn before producing shows for Universal in the 70s. But
yes, exactly.
Yeah, and again, there's a reason why we're still talking about the shows of Quinn Martin 4 or 5 decades later, because they stand out because he put the quality in. He invested the money in quality then, and they made an impact then, and they continue to resonate with viewers today and are discovering new viewers, such as shows like The Invaders, which, beyond its impact in the U.S., continues to attract new viewers around the world.
Yes. Well, the first time I met Quinn Martin, as I say, was after The Long Hot Summer, which should have been a hit, but they were filming it in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
I was offering my salary to do color print. Oh, are you people thinking here?
Yeah.
They were shooting at a different studio with MGM instead of Fox, where it was being produced. They were doing it in black and white when we were using the town of Tara, which was on Lot 3 at MGM,
Mm-hmm.
and Lot 2, which was Mickey Rooney Street, which had railroads, streetcars, it was, and water mills. It was the most beautiful place on earth. And it all belonged to MGM, and they were filming it in black and white. And I could not imagine what they were thinking. And of course, at the end of 26 episodes, it was dead.
Yeah.
And during that period, I was proposed The Invaders, a science fiction series, as it was presented to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I took forever to answer Mr. Martin. And he called me into the office one day. And there were two very famous writers sitting in the office, but kind of exempt from the conversation. But I noticed that they all had George Adamski books under their arms, which is what I was reading at the time,
Mm-hmm.
on good advice, that, see, I don't believe the aliens were just now invading. I think the aliens have been here for thousands of years. Sanskrit, Mayan, and all historic records were of visitors from another place who came in on what they called vimanas in Sanskrit. It's biblical. It's been going on for thousands of years, these visitors. But I didn't know at the time that the QM Productions got that. I didn't want to get involved in a science fiction series because I had known, or by example, other people who had done science fiction movies or shows, and forever they were given science fiction projects.
Right, you don't want to be typecast.
I didn't want to go that way. It was too early in my career.
Yeah.
So he calls me in with these writers sitting there, and he said, you're reluctant to do sci-fi. And I politely answered, yes, sir. He said, I understand that. I don't do sci-fi. This Invaders is going to be a study in paranoia. He said, much as David Jansen's show,
The Fugitive, right.
He said, this is one man who knows something that's been going on forever, perhaps, but he knows that they've landed and they've infiltrated education, government, law, every faction of life. And he cannot convince people to believe that they've been invaded. And I said, you got me, sir.
Yeah.
I'm on.
Because
that was it. That was the deal.
And with a format like that, I mean, you could, there are elements of sci-fi in that, but you could take it in different directions because the invaders looked like humans. You did not know where they were.
Exactly. And that was why it was so... In fact, David never knew who he was dealing with,
mm-hmm.
unless they had the stiff little finger.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But this, my research showed me that there was Mayan and Sanskrit records,
mm-hmm.
biblical records of visitors coming from another place who had these incredible vehicles. They called vimanas. Mm-hmm. They were like celestial cars. the more I read George Adamski, and I was pleased to see that the writers, who were the head writers on the show, had copies of Adamski's books with them. But we're referring to Nikola Tesla, who had designed a two-man flying saucer in his time, trying to deal with anti-gravity as the motivation. In the 1930s, the mid-1930s, Nazi scientists had developed a flying saucer that was anti-gravity that looked just like the UFO in The Invaders. Mm-hmm. And these photographs have only become apparent in the last 5 or 6 years. There's a French author who wrote a book called The Secrets of the Invaders, The Secrets des Invaders. It's only printed in French, but it was a bestseller at Monte Carlo in the book festival last year. Mm-hmm. And he has photographs of the German ships, and then he compares them to the show business ships. And I became suddenly aware of why all the writers who were writing on The Invaders were referring to George Adamski, who allegedly, but I believe it, I say allegedly because some people will never believe it, like they don't believe there's climate change, that Adamski had made contact with so-called aliens who looked exactly like us, who had 3 landing spaces on this planet. They were not interested in getting involved with humanity, which is so warlike and violent.
Yeah.
But they needed a space station for supplies. They were moving on to another galaxy. Well, the Pentagon, the White House, high government officials kept consulting with George Adamski, wanting to know what he knew. Why so much interest? And it was all kept top secret, and George Adamski kind of fizzled out into the past, but he is one of the greatest references. He has 3 or 4 books that are just stunning. And his contact with aliens on this planet.
We're talking to Roy Thinnes, the actor known around the world as David Vincent on The Invaders and Jeremiah Smith on The X-Files. All 43 episodes of The Invaders are available on DVD. You know, you're touching on a topic that we like to refer to on the show. It speaks to an authenticity that an actor brings to a role, whatever role he plays. I mean, no matter how far out the premise may seem, or even if it's a premise that you may be ahead of its time. I mean, if you as the actor can get the audience to believe that you believe that this is happening, then that everything else falls into place.
Well, exactly. And before I ever met with Mr. Martin and agreed to the show, I sought out other mentors. I said, please advise me. I don't know what the hell we're talking about here. And most of them said, read Adamski and look into Nikola Tesla. And there is German science from the mid-30s which proves that somebody was paying attention. Mm-hmm. It was top secret all across the board. And the more I read Adamski, I thought I could do this. I could get involved in this. What must have Mr. Adamski gone through? As I say, with interviews, you know, not 1 or 2, but many interviews with Pentagon and the White House, trying to glean some information from him about what the hell's going on this planet. All of which remain top secret. Mm-hmm. But if we read Adamski and we look into the German science, which has just come clear, as I say, 5 or 6 years ago, this man's book It's in French only, but I hope it's produced in all languages, because it will be awakening to a population whose anxiety level is getting higher and higher with what the hell's going on this planet. I, for instance, saw the possibility of going into, especially when we portrayed certain government officials, high-ranking officials in science and education, who were actually aliens. And David Vincent is discovering this. And it happened around the time that the United States was taking a tumble, one after another. War after ignorant wars, in which many died. And we always ended the wars saying, this doesn't make any sense, let's end it. Bump, it's over.
Yeah.
And we just saw one end there in Iraq. Are there powers that are supernatural or extraterrestrial who are guiding us into starving and putting into poverty and controlling the weather? You know, all of these were episodes on the Invaders, how they could control the weather, the financial conditions of nations. And so this Frenchman's book is that there's an Adamski hint or a clue in every one of these episodes. So I pray that they interpret it into English, because my French stinks.
You're listening to a replay of our conversation with Roy Thinnes that originally aired in 2016. Roy Thinnes, David Vincent on The Invaders, Jeremiah Smith on The X-Files. The complete two-part interview with Roy Thinnes is available as a digital download at shop.tvconfidential.net. In addition to talking about The Invaders, we discuss Roy's experience on The X-Files, The Psychiatrist, and General Hospital. Plus, we talk about his longtime interest in art and other topics. You can find that now online as a digital download at shop.tvconfidential.net. We'll take a look at This Week in TV History right after this. Ed Robertson, along with her friend Donna Allen Figueroa, who I understand has a new book out.
Yes, it's entitled Fall Again Beginnings. It's the first part of a 4-part contemporary romantic series set against the background of working actors.
Something that you know a thing or two
well,
about.
You write what you know, and I have been working in the business for several years.
It is not necessarily autobiographical, but it's based on...
Sure, many of the experiences that the actors in my book have, many have happened to me, many have happened to friends of mine. It's not, if you're looking for Valley of the Dolls, it's not, it's grounded in reality.
It is grounded in reality, and it's the first in a series.
Yes.
Called the Fall Again series.
Fall Again.
Which is available as a paperback as well as an ebook and in Kindle at fallagainseries.com.
Are you tired of high cable TV rates? Sign up for Dish today and get a $500 bonus offer while supplies last. Plus, lock in your price for 2 years guaranteed. Call All American Dish, your Dish authorized retailer now.
800-296-1251. 800-296-1251. That's 800-296-1251.
Offers require credit qualification, 24-month commitment, early termination fee, and e-auto pay. Restrictions apply. Call for details.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you're testing your blood sugar 4 or more times per day, injecting insulin 3 or more times per day, or using an insulin pump, call the Diabetic Health Hotline today.
800-712-8002. That's 800-712-8002. Paid for by U.S. Med.
Hi, this is Titus Welliver. You're listening to TV Confidential.
Attention sports fans. Now you can watch every football game you want all season long without leaving your home with Dish for about $50 a month. Compared to your cable bill, you can save almost $600 a year. Call right now and sign up for Dish and watch every football game you want. With Dish, there are no boxes to pay, plus get free installation as soon as tomorrow if you call now. And with Dish Anywhere, you can watch your favorite sports and channels on your smartphone, tablet, or laptop. Be one of the first 100 orders right now and get a free voice remote. Don't miss a single football game all year long and save a ton of money. Get a free voice remote and free installation as soon as tomorrow. But you gotta call All American Dish right now.
800-296-1251. 800-296-1251. 800-296-1251. That's 800-296-1251.